Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar on what's new in SharePoint Online. My name is Mike Tansey. I'm the head of sales at Chess, and with me today I have the fantastic James Mallalieu, our senior AI and Microsoft 365 consultant. In today's session, James and I will be running through the latest updates around SharePoint at high level, talking about the exciting advances in AI, demoing all the latest and greatest stuff around content creation, and certainly touching on some of those bits around admin and governance. Before we get started though, for those that haven't been to a Chess webinar before, I'll run you through just a little bit of housekeeping. Firstly, the session will be recorded, a copy of which will be made available to you later today. We'll also send out the slides. For any questions, we're holding 10 minutes at the end of the webinar, but if you want to post your questions as you go, please use the Q&A tab, which is located at the top of the screen. And finally, we're offering a one-to-one workshop for each of the companies here today. Now, this is a consultant-led session to discuss your specific SharePoint or AI scenarios with James and the team. And to take us up in this session, simply tick the request follow-up box in the survey that I'll paste into the chat, and that will be in the slide deck later on. And then one of the team will be in touch to book in that session. Before I hand over to James, I'll just cover off a quick overview to Chess. Okay, so who are Chess? We are one of the UK's leading independent technology service providers dedicated to making it easy for businesses to work securely, anywhere, anytime. We have a team of 280 IT professionals supporting over 18,000 customers, and we turn over 50 million annually. We offer a comprehensive range of services across 6 key areas, so just going down each of the coloured ribbons in sequence. Starting with Connect, so for your internet, mobile voice and data needs. Cloud for infrastructure, platform and software as a service type offerings. Devices for your laptops, your hardwares, your storage and networking components. Digital, which is all around the SharePoint, the Microsoft 365, AI and Fabric. Security for that end-to-end services, and this could be from a pen test and Cyber Essentials through to a managed SOCs combined with a strength of our sister company CyberLab. And lastly, it's services. So this is providing consultancy and project management services alongside user adoption, as well as the managed services and proactive support. So really our mission at Chess is to help businesses reduce cost, protect data and support businesses better using technology. And that's Chess as an overview. So I'll now pass you over to James to kick off the webinar. James, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Mike. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to see so many familiar names in the attendee list. So for those who don't know me, my name's James. I have been working with SharePoint for longer than I care to remember. I'm almost up to 25 years, I think, this year. So a little bit of experience with SharePoint. And what I wanted to do with this session is dip into what I think are the key new features or sets of functionality, either that have recently launched for SharePoint or are in preview and will about to launch. Now, in a session like this, I can't cover every new feature, so I'm hoping that what I've selected will have some relevance, some interest to some of you. And I would definitely suggest that Mike's offered to have a follow-up session if you want to dive into any of these topics in a bit more detail. Please do that, because there's so much we can cover. An hour is just never enough time. If you haven't got any questions as we go through, please put them in the chat, because I will monitor that as we go through. So if it's something while I'm talking, feel free to put it in chat. Otherwise, as Mike said, we've left a bit of time at the end. So I've divided this into 3 elements. We're going to talk a bit about building SharePoint sites in terms of pages and branding. Of course, we're going to have to talk about AI, and there's some really exciting new capabilities that I can't wait to show you that are in preview at the moment. And then we're going to talk a bit about admin and governance. So let's talk about a couple of the new features in respect of branding pages. So this is a capability that's rolled out recently. In fact, I suspect that most of you will have this already today in your SharePoint environments. And this is a change in terms of the way that the page templating works. Now I'm just going to swap over to my demo environment. So here we have the new template gallery. And the thing that you'll notice is there's a lot more templates. Okay, so Microsoft have put in a fair number of templates in here. And I believe the reason they've done this is largely because the capabilities they've added into Pages to give you more flexibility in terms of what you can do have allowed them to be more creative. So they've added in loads and loads of templates. Now we're going to look at a couple of those in a minute, but rest assured your existing templates will continue to work. And the way that you make templates is exactly the same as before. I am hoping that this is paving the way to Microsoft to allow you as organizations to create templates that you can automatically publish to your entire organization. So one of the challenges that I always come across is if you imagine you've got an intranet site that's comprised of 10, 15, 100 SharePoint sites, how do you synchronize your custom templates across all of those sites? It's a bit of a pain to do as of today, but I'm hoping this is on the roadmap for the future. So these new templates, let's have a look at a couple. So on first glance, unless you're sort of familiar with SharePoint, you might just say, well, it looks a bit like a normal SharePoint page, but not all is as it seems. So straight away on this page here, you can notice that there is a piece of content that includes 5 columns. That was not possible this time last year. If I go into this template here, you'll notice we've got a nice selection of images here. Now this isn't just one image, these are separate images. Again, not possible a few years ago. If we scroll down here, we've got an image overlaying another image. Again, wouldn't have been possible previously. And then if I select, say, the training one here, this is using all of these blocks here are all using a new web part called the editorial card web part, which allows you to put a piece of content onto the page, do some configuration around it, and then as you can see, they're reusing it quite a few times on this page. So let's create one of these pages. And again, on the face of it, this will look very similar to you. Now, what's made all of this possible is this new concept of what's called a flexible section. So this allows you, instead of having a 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, etc. section, it allows you to have a section where you can control the positioning of elements on the section using a grid. So you can see here we've got these 3 images, and I can actually position those images where I want within the section. Now this is a piece of functionality I've covered before in a previous webinar, and if you're interested, again, we can have a separate call because there's a lot of things you can do with this, but primarily it solves the issue of being able to position content onto the page in a more precise manner. So if we scroll down a bit further here, if you recall, I said there's an image on top of an image. That's effectively what's happening here. These flexible sections work perfectly across different browsers, sorry, different devices. So there's no worry about how to deal with the section on a mobile device. You can see there's a setting here of how to do it, but suffice to say, if I click preview, we get an option to see the page as it would be on a desktop and an option to see the page as we would do on a mobile, and it does the work required on ensuring the page still functions correctly. Just one other thing that I want to highlight, again, relatively new feature, but one I really like, is this new accessibility assistant down here. So as you're building pages, you can click the accessibility assistant and it will go through and it'll highlight elements on the page that may have a problem in terms of accessibility. So a good example would be hard to read text. So if your text is not a great color on a background, so let's say if I recolor this text here and make it a lighter gray. Actually, that's still quite easy. Let me just do this one here and make this color more difficult to read. I think you will agree that's pretty impossible to read. And now, when I go out of the page, this is hopefully, there should be something on here that will tell me that my text. We save and reopen the page. It should tell me the text is difficult to read. Okay, there we go. Hard to read contrast. If I click it, it takes me to that point in the page and it tells me what I need to do to resolve it. Another common one it would pick up on is images where you haven't added a alternate text. So if I take the alternate text away for that image and don't mark it as decorative, again, I'll just click off it and then go back on, then it'll tell me there missing alt text. Now, I should be clear, this accessibility tool doesn't solve all accessibility woes, but it does address common ones, particularly around heading orders, poor contrast in terms of text and accessibility. So that's the new page templates. So the other feature I just wanted to briefly cover for designing your site is around headers and footers. Now, these are some minor updates, but they're things that certainly I've come across over the years that can be a little bit frustrating, and it's nice to have a little more flexibility. So if I go into my option to change the look of the site, then I get the option to change the header and the footer. So if we go into the header, these are still the same layouts that have always been there: minimal, compact, standard and extended. But if I go into the new design tab, you'll see we have some additional options. So the first thing is I can select one of the custom theme colors. So a capability that was rolled out a while ago is the ability to define up to, I think it's 16 colors for your theme, as opposed to historically with SharePoint, you had a primary color and kind of an accent color, and that was it. You can now define up to 16 colors that are then available for you to use for things like headers. Now, in this case, I haven't used one of the colors. I've selected an image. And previously, that image was only available on the extended view, but that's now available on all views. Now, one thing when you select an image, you get the obviously design tools that are available for images within SharePoint. And one thing that's always important with header images, set your focal point. So this image is clearly a portrait image, okay? And I want to make sure that whatever header I pick, it kind of maintains some consistency. So I've selected this as being the focal point of the image. I can select that. And you can see what it's showing here is how the image would then be rendered across different places, different sizes of images. So always set the focal point. I can select to have an overlay. So you'll see that changes the color of the font. Obviously, that's highly dependent on the image you've used and the coloring of the image I've used. And if the content is going to appear over colors, you get this option of setting a gradient and setting the opacity. So a lot of flexibility there in making sure that your text that appears over the image is still visible. Next one is the ability to change the typography and the fonts. So if you've added custom fonts to your SharePoint environment, those can now be used in the header and the footer. Now, if I just go across into the footer, similar principles here, that now in the design tab, I can select different background colors. I can select an image, again, the same options here in terms of the overlay, and then different font colors to use in my footer down there. Okay, so that was a couple of the features that have been added to help you in branding sites and laying out pages. So if we change gears slightly now and talk about some of the new AI capabilities. Probably around a year ago, Microsoft rolled out Copilot features within SharePoint. And some of you may be aware that allows you to build agents or have agents available within the SharePoint experience. That can be to ask questions of the site or surfacing capabilities around dealing with documents. Now, the next kind of phase of this is what's been branded the knowledge agent. And just to be clear, this is a feature that's currently in public preview, and you will need a Copilot license to make use of it. Now, this knowledge agent satisfies 3 separate user personas: an end user using a site, someone responsible for managing the content and the web pages of the site, and someone responsible for managing document-based content. So I'm just going to go through each of those examples and show you a quick demo. So back to my demo environment, and I'm just going to go to my home page and I'm going to select a news article. So the first thing, if you're eagle-eyed, you might notice I have a little tile down in the corner, and this is the knowledge agent. So if you think about how Copilot works with SharePoint, it appears up here. If I open that, it'll open the agents associated with this site, whereas the knowledge agent's down here. Now, whether this is how they do this when it actually launches, I don't know. But the principle is this is contextual to who you are and what you're looking at. Whereas this isn't, this opens the agents. Okay, so if I click this now, and I'm an end user without edit rights, there's only a certain set of options I will get. Summarize this page, listen to an audio overview of this page, and ask a question. So the first thing I could do is summarize this page. It's not a very long page, but hey, I'm busy. Just give me a summary of what the page is saying. So you can see what it's done is it's opened an agent and it's asked the question, summarize this page in a few brief sentences. Apologies if that's quite small. The agent, that's how it displays its font at the moment. So it's given me a summary of what's on the page. Kind of interesting, but not that exciting. Now, if I'm doing something else at the same time, maybe doing the ironing, then I might say, you know what, generate an audio of this. So hopefully you'll hear this. I'm not going to play all of it.
Message from Chief Editor, September 2025. The article written by DeMarcus Ariano highlights key achievements at ReliCloud over the past year. Among the milestones, ReliCloud reports a 25% year-over-year revenue increase, reaching $3.2 billion. The company also welcomed over 500 new enterprise clients, expanded its global presence, and launched major product enhancements, notably an AI-driven analytics suite adopted by 60% of customers.
So, putting aside the North American accent there, it does a pretty good job of not just reading the page, but actually generating a piece of content that is, you know, more like a podcast, that type of thing. So it does a pretty good job of making the content digestible if I'm just listening to it. So that's just a couple of features that an end user would be able to use. Now, if we then think about the person responsible for managing this site, so I'm just going to go back to my home page. So for them, we have 3 features, all of which I am very excited about because they address common problems that site owners have within SharePoint. So if we click this on the home page and we select the option Improve this site, I'm going to zoom into these. So we've got 3 options here: retire inactive pages, find content gaps, and fix broken links. So retire inactive pages. This effectively gives us a list of pages within my site that are inactive, that haven't been viewed. Now I can set the time frame for this. So I can say 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And then when it gives me the list of pages, I can make a decision on what to do about them. Now, for instance, there's a few things I can do. So I'm going to look at this Wellbeing Month news article. So I can look at the page and I might want to look at it and see, well, why isn't it being viewed? Is it the content, etc.? I can snooze the suggestion and say, this will get some traffic in the next few weeks. Or the interesting thing here is I can retire the page. So let's just have a look at the page. Looks pretty interesting to me, but nevertheless. So I'm going to think, okay, I'm going to retire this page. So let's think about what this does. It does three things. It marks the page as retired, which means the page won't be surfaced in search or via agents. And it adds a banner to the page to indicate to a reader that this page is no longer active. So just to be clear, it doesn't remove the page, doesn't change the rights in the page, but it changes the page in terms of when someone views it. Let's have a look. So if I click retire this page, and I'm just going to close this second. So you can see here now, a banner's been added to the page. So that will be visible to any user of this page. When you do a search, and the changes won't have been affected yet, so this will appear in the searches. But at the end of my search, you see now I've got an option, search archive pages. This is the bit that allows the user to say, actually, show me the pages that have been archived. Whether Microsoft adjusts the terminology so it's kind of the same, retired, archived, I don't know. But that's how that would work. And likewise, that page's content will now no longer be returned in agents when I ask Copilot a question of it. Okay. So that's the retiring pages. And at any point in time, I can go to an area that says, show me retired pages. Those are all the pages. And I could, if I want to, then just, not sure what the word is to unretire a page. Maybe it's unretire it, but there we go, rehydrate the page. Now, the next option is the option to find content gaps. And what this is doing is it's using search analytics to look at searches that people are doing where content isn't being returned or content isn't being clicked upon. You might have looked at some of the search analytic reports and looked at things like that before, but effectively this is going to bring that information to the forefront and say, lots of people are searching for this topic. Maybe you should generate a page, or maybe you should generate some content on that topic. Okay. Now, in my demo environment here, I haven't generated enough search traffic for it to make any suggestions there, but effectively that's what it will do. Broken links. I am so excited about this one because the amount of time I get asked about how do we deal with broken links in a SharePoint site, and often I feel I need to give the impression of scratching my head and going, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that before, only knowing that I know full well what the answer is to that problem. So this is a great thing. And the way they've implemented it, whilst isn't perfect, is pretty clever. So what happens is whenever someone attempts to link to a piece of content within this site and generates a 404 error. So if I put, I'll just show you this. So let's say there's a link on a page to llamas.aspx. What happens? 404. That is now logged so that when I'm in my site, don't think that one will show up just yet. Not yet. But it'll tell me that it's there. So if we have a look down here, you can see here it's telling me these links originated from outside the site, which means it was a link from something that existed outside the site. Hopefully one of these, yes. A page on this site has a link to another page on this site that doesn't exist. Okay, so it's telling me someone's clicked on a link and they've got an error. So I can now decide what to do with it. Kick the can down the road, i.e. snooze for a few weeks. View the page with the broken link. Okay, let's have a look. Let's click it. It is indeed a broken link. So what do I want to do about it? Well, I could go and fix the page, of course, but I also get another option in here, which is to redirect it. So I'm going to say, if you get a link to that document, redirect the person to, let's see what we've got. Who is your HR hero? Okay. Now let's see if that works. So if I go back to the site that had the broken link, which is this one, give it a quick refresh. Okay, may take a few minutes for it to work, but that's the principle, okay? Now in the background, what's happening is there's a list being generated where all of those broken links are being stored, so you can manage them over time. So if I go into site contents here, redirects, you can see there's the redirect from there to there. Pretty cool. So that seems a little thing. Why they didn't think of putting that into SharePoint years ago, who knows? But a great thing. Okay, so those are the kind of options that can help the person who manages the site. Now, I think they are super useful because a lot of site management in SharePoint can be a little bit esoteric, so you need to know a little bit about SharePoint to do it. I think these really bring it to the forefront, so someone with less experience, less knowledge about SharePoint can actually make effectual changes and improve the quality of the site. Now, the other example someone can do is create a page, and I'm just going to kick this off and then I'm going to move on to the next conversation because it takes a few minutes to do this. So let's say the improve this site has said, you've got a content gap around AI adoption. Why don't you create a page? Great idea. So I'm going to create a page. And I can create a page, you won't be surprised here, with using prompts. So I'm going to create a page, not a news post. So I'm going to create a page about driving adoption of AI. I'm going to select some resources for it to use as a basis to generate the page. So here's a PDF, 10 best practices to accelerate your employees' AI skills. I'm going to make it enthusiastic and I'm going to make it concise. I want to create a private draft. Now with prompts, I could keep going, right? So for anyone who's used generative AI, you know that you can put a lot of information in the prompt, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to say, do that. And then we'll kick it off and it'll start generating a page. So depending on how quickly it does this, I'll either leave it to do it or I'll come back. But you can see what it's doing. It's going to go through a process of, I'm going to lay out the page. So I'm going to work out the structure of my page. And for this, it will add sections into the page. So you can see it doing this. Then it's going to add the different sections. Then it's going to add the different content. So I think I will come back because it's not that interesting to watch it doing. So I did see there was a question there. Can the knowledge agents be restricted to only certain sites? Yes. So at the moment, you have to enable this capability in your whole environment, and then you can restrict which sites that capability is available for. So there is some governance and administration that you can apply for the knowledge agent. Okay, so we covered about an end user, and we've covered about keeping your content fresh using the inactive pages, content gaps, broken links. So the next one I want to talk about is how you can assist the person who has to deal with a lot of documents. And it introduced a name that I'm not sold on yet, metadata hygiene, basically applying metadata and keeping metadata up to date. Now, this is a capability that has actually been in SharePoint for quite a while. It's a feature called autofill columns. But what I really like with how they've introduced it as a knowledge agent is they've wrapped the whole thing up in kind of a Copilot-y type experience. So let me show you this in practice. If I go to my site, which I can see Copilot's busy writing this page, So in my site, I've got a document library, and this document library could contain, well, a few documents, thousands of documents. And these documents are job roles, okay? Now, obviously, the title of the document is quite useful, but I want to extract other information. So if I had 1,000 job roles or 100 job roles in here, I might want to add other columns that allow me to expose additional information about that job role, which I can do. And every time I upload a document, I can add the appropriate tagging. But it's prone to error and it's prone to people not doing it at all. So I go to my knowledge agent here, and because I'm looking at a library, it now gives me some additional options, which are very specific to do with a document library. Organize this library, excuse the misspelling of organize, set up rules, and create new view. So I'm going to click organize this library. And this is great. I love this. So organizing your content, which is what it's doing. So it's looking at the library, it's looking at the content in the library, and it's going to come back to me and make suggestions on how it thinks it can organize my content. Okay, so let's see what it's done. It's looked at the content of these documents, which are unstructured Word documents, and it's looking for, well, what could I extract from those documents? And it's given me 3 suggestions. So it said, okay, I can extract the job title. Not really that difficult considering that's on the file name. I can also extract the department that the job relates to. Yeah, quite good. Whether the role is eligible for remote working. I like that. And that's it. Okay, so I can also suggest other ones. So I'm going to say, okay, well, give me some other ideas. So it's come up with its 3, and it's now going to come up with some other ones, again, looking at the documents. So it says, okay, key responsibilities. Here's a summary of the role, kind of useful. Minimum education requirements. And so that's 2. No, that's just another 2. So I kind of like that. And you can see down here, it's showing me what it's doing, because at this point, it hadn't actually applied those changes. So let's just pick one of these. Remote eligibility. So let's have a look at what it's done here. So it's added a column called remote eligibility. It's made it a type yes or no. And it's written a prompt. Determine if the position described in the document is eligible for remote working. Return yes if remote work is mentioned. Otherwise, return no. And then I can test the prompt. Okay. Now you can do these yourself. You can give it pretty detailed prompts to write, but that gives you an idea of how it works. So I'm just going to say, I like all of that. Add all of those changes to the current view. Now, what's nice here is not only has it decided columns that might be useful, not only is it populating it with content from the documents that are added, it will continue to do so based on new documents that are added into this library. So all of that information, which you can see it's going through doing, it's going to populate. Okay. Now, if you've got a document library with 20,000 documents, then this may take a while, as it says there. Okay. For this number of documents, yeah, it's pretty quick, so you can see it's doing it. So I'm just going to turn off to view the activity. You can see that's what it's done. So that's the first thing I can do. Apply metadata and improve metadata hygiene in terms of ongoing management of content. Doesn't stop there though. So a lot of people often say to me, I'm going to use Power Automate because I want to do this with my documents or this with my library. And they're entirely unaware that SharePoint already adds a really cool feature called, under Automate, called Rules and Quick Steps. You don't need to go into Power Automate. This is really easy ways of automating things. But if that weren't simple enough, we can now just say, I'll set up rules. Okay, so what do I want to do? Let's say, send me an email when there is a new role within the customer service department. Okay, so yep, it's been correct, but it's had a go. So if when a file is added, if the value of department name is customer service, send an email to me. I feel you've got to praise Copilot sometimes. So it's done it. Save changes, add the view. It's going to send me an email when there's a new thing. So this idea that we can use AI to generate rules that will then run in the background to automate tasks makes that whole process so much simpler. And then the last one is creating a new view. So anyone who's used SharePoint for a while will be very familiar with creating views in terms of selecting your columns, selecting your filters, selecting your sort by. Now, I can kind of just ask to do it using natural language. So create a new view, filtering roles for the department. Again, with prompts, because it's using large language models, you can be, far more prescriptive in what you're asking it to do. So there you go. I've created a new view that filters the items where the department name is customer service. Only roles within the customer service will be shown. Perfect. Okay. So let's just recap. I've used the organize this library as a way for it to suggest new columns, or for me to add new columns that use the autofill feature, which basically you write a prompt to extract something either from the document or from the metadata, and then generate a piece of piece of value for the column. I've used a prompt to generate a rule that will effectively automate the things that you can do with rules as of today. So if you're not familiar with what you can do with rules as of today, these are these type of things. As date approaches, so this is quite nice. As a date approaches, 30 days before something's due to expire, send an email or do something. Okay. And then I've also used natural language as a basis to create a view. Okay. Without, again, the user having to understand the intricacies of SharePoint. Now, if you recall, I was generating a page with my other auto-generate page. So this is the page it's built. And like most things with Copilot, it's up to me as a human to make the decision, yes, I'm happy with that. So clearly I'd read the page in a bit more detail than I am now, but I'm going to say keep it. So I've now got a page. Now, just a couple of other things within the page that are relatively new. In the text editor web part, we now have draft with AI. Same if you've done this in Outlook. If you've got Copilot in Outlook, Word, Excel, you can take a piece of content, you can select this, and you can say, give it a prompt to tell it to rewrite a piece of content or generate a piece of content, etc. Okay. Yes. And then I would make that two. The other thing that we have in Pages is this thing called create a section, but create a section with AI. So what this allows you to do is give a prompt to generate a section within a page. So for instance, let's have a look. Frequently asked questions about AI adoption, or let's just take the prompt that it's got there. Now those prompts, as you can see, they're contextual to the rest of the content in the page. So it is looking at the page and it is saying, okay, what type of prompt could I generate for this page? And then the last one I will do let's just delete that, is there's a new web part available that's a very interesting one. It will generate an FAQ for you. And whilst you as the author of the page need to have a Copilot license, no one who views the page needs to have a Copilot license. So a simple example, let's generate an FAQ for this, same page, purpose, general FAQ, click start. So what this does is it looks at your source content and it goes through 3 separate stages. It builds what are called the categories of FAQ questions, which is what it's done here. And it will say, okay, are you happy with that? Yes. I could at that point add new categories in, rename them, reorganize them. It will then generate the questions themselves. Again, it will say, are you happy with that? I can say yes or no, I can resort them, etc. And if I'm happy with that, generate draft answers. It will then generate the answers for those questions. Again, I can editorialize the answers. Then when I've done that, save my page, and I've got an FAQ. Super useful for things like employee policies and procedures. You just want to create a page that is an FAQ of a particular policy or procedure. This does a pretty good job doing it. Okay, I'll leave that one running. So back to our slides. So the last section I want to talk about is some admin and governance features. And I'm going to start talking about licensing. But before you kind of lose the will to live, I've got some good news. So historically, some of the capabilities that were available for SharePoint in terms of administration and governance were dependent on the license you had. So whether you had Business Premium and E3, or whether you had a Microsoft 365 E5. Okay. Now, over the last 2 years, as more and more Copilot related capabilities have rolled out, Microsoft have, in conjunction with their release of Copilot, released a huge number of capabilities to allow organizations to manage their content. Now, this is under the guise of, well, if you enable AI, you need to manage your content better. But in reality, most of these capabilities are important for organizations irrespective of whether you're using Copilot. They allow you to effectively govern content. But here's the thing, in an unheard of stroke of good fortune, these features, as of today, Microsoft have said that if one user in your organization has a Copilot license, these features will all be enabled and you can use them. Now, that Copilot license doesn't even have to be the SharePoint administrator. So if you have one Copilot license, which I strongly suggest, if you spend £20 a month on anything, do get a Copilot license for at least one person, all of these features will be enabled, okay? And these features are invaluable, right? And I'm just going to cover one of them today, but it's sort of the only time that I've had good news to say about Microsoft licensing in a long time. So let's have a look at this feature. So the feature I'm going to talk about, sorry if that is very small, is called Snapshot Reports. Snappy title, excuse the pun. But this report allows you to baseline your entire SharePoint environment for permissions. Why would we want to do that? Because SharePoint makes it very easy to overshare content. The clue's in the name. And what this report allows you to do is quite quickly pinpoint areas where oversharing might be a problem. So I'll just quickly demonstrate an example of that. If I go into my environment and we go to data governance reports, so I'm in SharePoint admin, data governance and access, and I've gone into snapshot reports. And I've already run this report, okay? So this is basically saying, in my environment, I've got 41 SharePoint sites that have permissioned users. You're likely to have far more than this. Now, if I go into the report, I'm going to focus on one particular site. I've got a SharePoint site called the Super Secret Project. Now, what this baseline report is telling me is how many files are in this SharePoint site. Not that interesting, but there's a couple of really important bits. Out of those files, how many of them have unique permissions? Now, what do I mean by unique permissions? I mean that typically someone's shared the file and not the site. So the site has security applied to it, but someone's taken a file from within the site and shared it uniquely. And the reason why I know that they've shared it with someone who doesn't have rights to the site is because over here, I can see that the policy for this site is private, okay? But someone's generated a sharing link for everyone in my organization. Okay, this is a really common issue with SharePoint because this is the default way that sharing works, okay? So I can straight away see from here, I've got Super Secret Project site where someone's shared a piece of content from within that site to everyone in the wider organization. That's pretty cool to get that information. But that's not the bit that's exciting. The bit is, what am I going to do about it? So at this point, the administrator thinks, how am I, as the administrator, going to solve this? Well, there's two easy ways to solve it. Way one, click the site and you click restrict site access. You instantly remove any sharing links from the site. So if you know this site contains sensitive content, you can just do this, restrict access, and that will prevent any of the individual sharing links from working. You could do that. Or you could say, I'm going to initiate a site access review, i.e., I'm going to make it with the responsibility of the site owner to resolve this. So if I do this, let me show you what happens. I've already done it. So the owner will get an email, and the email will say, your SharePoint administrator has requested you to review permissions for your site. And I will click on the link here. Okay, what is it I need to look at? Takes me into my site, and it lists all the individual shared items from that site. So straight away I can see, what's this document? 10 best practices to accelerate, blah, 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 blah. I see the problem here. Number of people in your organization sharing links. Yeah, that perhaps shouldn't have happened. So I'm going to go to the links. That's the link. Anyone in my organization can view it. I'm going to delete the link. Thank you very much. Close that. Complete my review. And I've done it. So the administrator's got a handle on the whole organization. The administrator has elected to make it the responsibility of the site owner to resolve the issues. Guess what? That's the site owner's responsibility, and provided the tool for the site owner to go through and resolve those issues. Maybe it's just me that gets excited about governance, but this is a massive, massive, massive leap forward in terms of how you solve some of these things. So that is that in a nutshell. Okay, so back to my slides. Okay, so I know that's been a quick kind of whiz through of quite a lot of features, but as I said, I've selected some different areas that I think would have broad applicability, broad interest. So I'm hoping there's some things that I've covered there that's piqued your interest. I'm sure some of these things you might have seen before. But yeah, as I said, all of them really we can dive into in a lot more detail if that's something of interest to you. So, Mike.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. A really great session, and I can confirm that it is just you that gets excited about governance. But yeah, thank you very much. That was really good, James, to see the branding features, some of the broken list features come through. I think a lot of those changes have been requested by the community for some time. So it's really good to hear Microsoft listening to their customers. And the AI functionality is fantastic. So perfect for organizing libraries and doing those changes on the fly. I'm impressed with Microsoft being so generous with the AI licensing, but a part of me is a bit suspicious as well at the same time. So always going a bit cautious. So I'll do a few updates and then we'll dive into some of the Q&A. I can see a couple of questions that we've got in the chat and the Q&A section as well. So for those that are interested, particularly in the AI elements that James has shared today, we ran a series of webinars. So this is a 3-part webinar series that is available to watch on demand on the website. So I'll paste the link into the chat box shortly, but it's at chessict.co.uk/events. We talk about the fundamentals of Copilot and AI agents. So really setting the scene and grounding the session there. We then talked about how to get your business AI ready and how to protect, secure and govern that data. And finally, we talked about how you can win hearts and minds. So bringing those users on board with you to make sure that everyone's getting the best out of the technology and really on board with the way of working. So I'll drop the link into the chat shortly. I'll now just talk about our FIT roadmap and then we'll dive into the Q&A. So it feels like I can't go a day without mentioning our biggest event of the year. This month, we're excited to bring you the FIT conference, so Future Insight and Technology Roadshow. This is live in Manchester, in London and in Glasgow. These events are all about exploring what's working right now, what's changing and what's next in the AI and digital transformation. So you hear from industry experts, you'll be able to join interactive discussions. There'll be breakout sessions covering kind of AI, cybersecurity, digital transformation, and really that future ways of working. And a great opportunity to network as well. So you can see the dates on the screen. Manchester on the 21st of October, and then we're running London and Glasgow both on the 23rd of October. Some great venues there as well, especially the Lord's Cricket Grounds for any cricket fans out there. So I'll paste the link into the chat shortly and we hope to see you there. So I'd like to ask as well, everyone who's got a phone in front of them to kindly scan the QR code and tell us how we did. So there's an option, as James mentioned, I mentioned at the start of the session, to book a technically led consultancy session directly with James. This is a free of charge session. It's great to book a session in with somebody that's living and breathing this as a sounding board. James goes into a lot of organizations, sees a lot of different scenarios. So, you know, you think that your scenario is unique and it's got a problem, but the chances are that we've come across that and we've got some advice or some guidance from another customer or industry. As well, please do provide any feedback because we do adapt these sessions based on the feedback. So again, I will paste all of those links that you've got into the chat now, and then I think what we'll do is we will dive directly into the Q&A. So do post your questions in the Q&A and we'll try and get to those in order. So James, starting I think with Alan's question, and this was in particular around the broken links. He mentioned, would the broken links functionality be likely to be able to assist with migrated sites?
So 2 things about broken links that are important. Firstly, it only works for pages at the moment. So if you're migrating documents, it doesn't work for documents as of today. And secondly, it doesn't scan your content. Effectively, how it works, as I understand it, is it records when there's a 404 HTTP 404 message that is using a path that is a subpath of your site. So if you migrate a site that already has loads of broken links, over time, if those broken links are on pages and therefore they're clicked, those will be recorded. But it won't just give you a definitive list of broken links, if that makes sense. They have to actually be actioned, registered as a broken link by the user getting 404, and then that will appear on your list. So I think it's more of a useful tool for a BAU activity, you know, just managing your site on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to right, we need to sort out loads of content on our site, be it documents or legacy pages, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, fantastic. Thank you, James. And it does seem like there's quite a few people that are with you on the governance side, so maybe it's not just you that's excited about that in the chat. Okay, so running through the meeting chat. So there's a question here around the organized processes and rules and whether those will filter down to the subfolder.
Yeah, so if you think about the way that columns work in SharePoint, they work throughout for everything within a library, irrespective of your folder hierarchy. So if you define a column with a autofill, it'll apply everywhere across your folder hierarchy. Because from SharePoint's point of view, it doesn't really understand your folder hierarchy. It just sees a flat long list, so it will apply. Rules, likewise, the same thing. The rules apply based on columns, and the columns are ubiquitous across your folder hierarchy, so the rules will still fire.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. Okay, we've got another question. This one is regarding a Copilot licensing and a SharePoint admin not required to make changes, etc. How can this be restricted or prevent this capability?
I'm not sure I quite follow the question. So was this to do with if those data governance elements are enabled because your organization has a Copilot license, but you don't want to make use of them? If
yes.
That's
how I'm reading it.
Right. Okay. So just to be clear, it's when I talk about SharePoint admin, it's the SharePoint global admin, not the site admin, as it's called. So typically in the world of SharePoint admin, i.e. the person who has rights to the SharePoint admin center, on the whole, they can do everything in there. So you couldn't prevent them from doing things that are in there. But I'm not talking about a site admin. A site admin wouldn't be able to do any of those things themselves, because those data governance reports are only available within the admin center. Apologies if I misunderstood the question.
I think that's how I read it as well. Thank you, James. Another question here. If you are a SharePoint owner, but not an admin, can you still get access to the knowledge agent? And how would you go about this if your organization appears to restrict your SharePoint?
Yeah, so the knowledge agent, depending on your rights, will give you different capabilities. So there are some capabilities that you'll only get if you're a site admin. There are capabilities that you'll only get if you're a site owner. There are capabilities that you'll get if you're a site member. And there are capabilities you'll get as a visitor. The agent as it stands today is in public preview. It has to be enabled in your tenancy. It's very quick to enable it, but it does have to be enabled. And as of today, the only users that will see it will be those that have Copilot licenses assigned. As we move forward to Microsoft rolling this out for real, for production, they have said that they haven't been clear exactly how this is going to be licensed. But they have said they will provide granularity in terms of enabling it at a site level, because one of the challenges we've seen with SharePoint agents is once it's enabled, it's kind of enabled everywhere, and it becomes slightly more difficult to then control the usage of it. So I'm hoping they give us a bit more control there.
Fantastic. Yeah, fingers crossed they will. Thank you, James. A couple of other questions. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more. When an inactive page is retired, is it still available for people to view?
Yes. Yeah. So that when it's made inactive, it effectively just applies a bit of metadata to the page, which doesn't affect its permissions. It doesn't stop links working to it. It simply means that there's a banner at the top of the page to warn the reader that this page is not being actively managed. And also, it doesn't appear in search by default, and an agent won't respond to it by won't generate content based on inactive pages. I mean, I've been thinking about where I would typically recommend active pages to be used, because I wouldn't automatically assume that if a page hasn't been used, it's therefore not relevant. So I think it's a site-by-site basis, is thinking about how you might use that facility and why you might use it, because clearly some content has value beyond, even 36 months. It may still have value in terms of people finding it in the search.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. I think that's taken us up to time. So I'd like to thank you, James, for a really good informative session. Lots of demos, lots of interesting bits there. So thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone on the call for your questions, for attending. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. Final time, I'm just going to paste that link into the chat. You can scan the QR code. It only takes 2 minutes. We want your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you, everyone. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.